President of Divorce Right. And we provide training for HR professionals and company supervisors. And we also provide divorce coaching and case management for your divorcing employees. And if you're a member of SHRM, we want you to know that we have credits for you for each and every one of our LinkedIn Lives each and every week. And I will provide a link to you to a form to get you those credits at the end of the program today. And I want to introduce you to Paulette Rigo. She is a certified divorce coach, a certified divorce specialist, a credentialed mediator, and the director of coaching and management here at Divorce Right. And she's also the author of this amazing book, The Better Divorce Blueprint. And I want you to know that together we are on a mission. We tackle the biggest disruptor in your company, and that's divorce. And today we have another expert that provides relief for your divorcing employees. And we're going to be talking about the 3 biggest mistakes people make when choosing how to divorce without good support with our very special guest, Sherry Morris. Sherry is a lawyer and now a full-time divorce coach who supports individuals and couples in any stage of divorce. And today we are so excited to have her say, Paulette, why don't you say hello and get us started?
Oh, Sherry, I am so over the moon excited that you're here. Of all the divorce coaches that I know, and I know quite a few, it's really been an honor to meet you, get to know your work, you personally, professionally. So thanks for joining us. And yes, HR professionals, take advantage of those SHRM credits. Please do. Trust me, at the end of the year, you'll be like, oh, so glad I have those. So Sherry, thank you for coming on our weekly LinkedIn Lives that we do every Thursday, 1 to 1:30. It's really important to have professionals come and join Vicki and I week to week, because the knowledge and the expertise and the experience that they share, that they have, is so vital to the success for HR professionals and companies. So thank you for coming and being here with us today.
Vicki and Paulette, it's truly my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And a little bit about your background and why you decided to become a divorce coach, or how you got into this, because that's the question I always get.
Absolutely. So I've been doing this in this space for a long time. I was a lawyer by training and long practice, and shifted into full-time coaching after my own divorce. And what I noticed was there was a gap between having a good lawyer, therapist, financial person, and someone like a divorce coach who can walk you as a practical guide through every step of the process, whether you're contemplating, in the midst of, or have post-divorce complications. I put together credentialing for myself, including that as a parent coordinator, so I can also do parenting plans. I spend a lot of time doing coaching mediation with couples to get the pain points settled so they can get on with the rest of their lives, taking care of themselves and their kids. So that's why, from my perspective, knowing a divorce coach is important.
And I love the fact that you've had that journey both with your own divorce personally, but also you're an attorney. Like, you get it. You were in the trenches, my dear, like in the midst of it, right? So when you can live it personally, but also professionally, the resume is deep, right?
Yes.
So, thank you. So we're going to ask a couple questions, and I'd love to start with, what are the employment consequences of divorce? We don't think of it that way, but there are consequences. And can you walk us down that path? What would that look like?
So what I find when I work with clients, most of them are employees, or certainly some entrepreneurs, but most people work for some kind of company. And when you're going through a divorce, you are much less focused, right, at work. You are concerned about what's happening in your life. You may have mental health issues going on. You have maybe additional physical needs that need to be tended. And certainly your eye may not be on that ball at work because you're so scattered in what needs to be done outside of the office.
It's incredibly difficult, and it's so easy to get distracted because you think it's going to be one way, it ends up being another way. And then, of course, there's a whole flux of transition and things thrown at you in the middle of it, while you're like, well, I didn't see that coming. How come they didn't tell me that was going to happen? And these last minute appointments, and all of a sudden your day's going, brilliantly. And bam, you get this last minute email that just throws you for, well, Oh, we won't use the word, right? But it throws you for, totally off kilter. And you're trying to go to work and stay focused and productive. And it's really easy to get sidetracked, right?
It is. And think about all those, as you go through a divorce, if you've been through one, and if you haven't, you certainly know someone who has. I have to go pick up my child. That was never our routine, but now I have to do that. And they haven't thought about it or managed it or have a plan for it. So a lot is thrust upon you during divorce that maybe you didn't expect. And that's a consequence for your employer. And so planning for that and having support for that is critical, in my professional opinion.
Right. So, what can be done to support employees who are going through divorce?
First of all, I think it's really important to name it, to give the employee an opportunity to discuss it as much or as little as they want.
Mhm.
I think having explicit and implicit resources available is really important. So that means you come to us as the employer, and we're going to tell you all about the resources we have as you go through this journey of divorce. Or if you don't want us involved but need some resources, we're going to make sure that happens too, because obviously people have different comfort levels when it comes to their own sense of agency and self and their privacy. But I think the more we talk about divorce, the more we normalize it, right? I mean, that's one of the big principles of my business. And I think it's the same at work. And making that support explicit is really important.
Because in the past,
can I
it's like,
interject can I just interject just something that when you were saying that, a lot of the research actually shows that the number one reason an employee leaves after divorce, and they have 5%, by the way, 5% of divorcing employees quit. But one of the reasons that they leave is because they didn't have support from their employers, and it wasn't a conversation that they ever felt comfortable in talking about with their employers, and so therefore they leave. So this is very critical to that employee retention uh, mandate that HR managers are very aware of and are looking for answers for. This is one of them. So thank you for bringing that up.
And let me just name divorce, like death of a spouse, illness of a child, any other big event is a life transition. And we need to really start talking about it in this space, right? And we know that support shows up explicitly at work for some things and just not for others. And this needs to be put in that bucket.
Yes, agreed.
because in the past, there's just been this like secretive, hush hush stigma. The landscape, the culture has just not been open about having these really difficult discussions. Not that, you want to be like prying, but if they don't feel that they have a safe container, there's risk for them. They feel like they're just not going to open up because it's too risky for them to have that conversation. And if they feel that they have the opportunity to discuss as little or as much as they feel they need to in a safe container, it will make a difference, right?
Absolutely.
Mm. So, what mistakes do people make when choosing how to divorce?
So I really think there are several. And one of the most obvious, perhaps, to me as a full time coach and parent coordinator is watching people rush headlong without planning for divorce and doing it in a way that's escalated while they're escalated. So, in other words, planning is so critical and important. And that's where you can also have resources at work to help with that. So, the point is that when I see clients rushing headlong, let's just get this done because if I rush through it, it'll be over and I won't have to deal with it. In fact, you'll have to live with the consequences, right? Of those choices, of those decisions, of those negotiations for a very long time. And if you want to be well, and of course you want your children to be well, then it's really important to slow it down. But you have to feel, as you said, Paulette, that there's a safe container, that there's a way to do that. And so I think rushing too much can be a real mistake. And I see that a lot. And one of my goals with clients is to slow them down, to name the steps, to talk about how to lower the chaos by de-escalating themselves in the process.
And it's very tempting to just say, all right, buckle up. Let's get this done. I always get the question, how long does it take? When am I going to be done? Well, how much longer? When is this going to be over? And this feeling of just this impending, cycle of the unknown. I always call it relationship ambivalence or divorce ambivalence. It just lingers, and then feeling as if, well, is this normal? Should it take this long? And there is no answer to the question, how long does divorce take? For some people, it can take a matter of 30 to 60 days. That's really quick. But some of it takes years. I was 8.5. So, that's a big spectrum, right? But at least they know that it's going to take time and to do it methodically and not to rush. I agree. Yeah. The mistake. Yeah.
So, Sherry, what are the ways that we can support employees in divorce?
Well, my hope by going into companies that have employees who are going through life transitions like divorce, you can provide the support they need. And from my perspective, that's an acknowledgement of what's happening, assuming they're willing to share, and then resources, explicit and implied, that give them tools. So they know, for example, there are different ways to divorce. There's litigation, but there's also mediation, a much better process in my view. But what does mediation mean? Does it mean we're sitting with one person? Do we each have a lawyer? I'm very confused. I don't know. Let's teach people about divorce, just as we would any other life transition, like dealing with grief, which you may also have in divorce. So giving them tools as an employer supports the company as well as the employees.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that I think that we need to kind of push forward is that this really does help the company. And I think that has been one of those things for so many years. It has been, this verboten, we can't touch it. It's too taboo.
Yes.
And also there hasn't really been a resource for them like Divorce Right, where we come in and can manage this for the company. But it's been one of those things, I think, that companies have said, well, this is a personal problem. We can't deal with it. But when they actually understand the impact financially to the company by ways of employee retention, people quit, right? The attrition, I guess I should say. And 40% of divorcing employees, the divorcing employees lose approximately 40% of their productivity during the course of their divorce and before and after, because there's the thinking about it stage and then there's the after it. Paulette certainly went through that whole appellate process for years and years and years. And that can just go on and on and on. I was just on the phone with someone day before yesterday, 8 years divorced. Now they're fighting over child support and spousal support. And so it still continues 8 years later. So we would love to be that support. But also we need the companies to acknowledge that that something can be done, because I don't think that they've ever thought of that there was actually something that could be done, because it's always been their problem. But now we want to say this is actually a community problem and it impacts your bottom line. So we're grateful to have you on as one of the resources that we want to put forward. And I do want to let you know that those that are listening is that we do have a resource guide that's available to you. If you just reach out to us at info@divorcerightinc.com, we will send that resource guide to you so that you can, at the very least, hand them something that they can use as a resource for what they need. So thank you for that. And then the question that I would have is, why does it matter if people have tools to navigate their divorce? What do you think the why on that is?
I think the why is, and this links to a comment I see someone posting live, asking about when in the process is a good point to have parents be in communication with a parent coach. The why, in answer to your question, relates to this question in my mind. People don't even know there's such a thing as a parent or co-parent coach, right? And so the why to answer that is, if you can get your employees a resource and they can feel held, heard, validated, and de-escalated because they're in neutral communication with a co-parent, wow, they can focus at work. So I think that, these align, whether it's an issue around their children and issue around their finances, if it's a legal question, how do we get people these resources so that they're not spending their time at work simply spinning wheels because they're worried about very real problems?
Mm. I
Um,
mean, I don't think there's ever a bad time to give anyone a resource, right? As soon as they feel that, just the fact that they know that there are resources, there are tools, there are tips, and dare I say tricks, to learn, and finding the right expert with the right experience, with the right knowledge and the right demeanor to be matched with the right professional. Maybe that's legal, financial, residential, lending, insurance, taxes, mental health, parenting. It affects every aspect of their life. And the more that they understand that not any one expert knows every answer to the aspects of divorce, yes, us divorce coaches can be the overseeing cheerleader, quarterback, organizer of the process. But I'm the first to admit that I don't always have the answers to everything. In fact, I rarely have all the answers to anything. But if I don't know the answer, just as you, Sherry, you probably know someone that will, right? So we then can provide the right tools and the right resources. And having a a platform such as divorce, right? Why do people not know this exists? Because it didn't exist. Like, this is a pioneer game changer for corporations, for HR departments, for professionals. That's when, Vicky came to me last year and was like, we got to talk. Because divorce coaches are busy, and it's making me really proud that people are finding out about what I do, what you do, why somebody who's an attorney would choose to leave that profession and do this work. You're a shining example why.
right.
And I love attorneys, don't get me wrong. Some of my best friends are attorneys, but it's a different approach, right, Sherry? It's just a different mindset, a different demeanor to tackling the process, the intimacy of divorce.
It sure is. And I think really, I love what you said about how we are a resource to other resources. And I sort of think of myself standing next to the client or next to the employer and pointing out around the circle other people that can support that employee. So you think about it like a ring of support. And, as a coach, I can be the one holding their hand and making sure they're held in all those other categories that they need. So I think for employers to do this is terrific. I think it's so necessary. And, I do think employee retention will increase, and because, employee satisfaction at their company, right?
Right.
And that's a big deal now, right? With this generation, which is a wonderful thing, that companies have to figure out what kind of puts their profile in front, what keeps their employees happy. And this is a great resource, whether they're divorcing, separating, ending a relationship, right? Like, these tools all apply.
Mm. And it doesn't
Exactly.
just end when they have the piece of paper in their hand, as you said, Vicki, right? Like, there are many, many contempt issues. There's enforcement issues. There's modification issues. We all think, oh, I'm divorced. Finally, I'm done. And usually I want to be like, yes, you are. Congratulations. But then you sometimes think, well, yeah, what can we do to keep that well-oiled machine that everybody's worked so hard to come to, that agreement, that settlement, that ending, still maintained until, well, the children are emancipated and whatever happens. Sometimes this could be 10, 15, 20 years later, where that settlement, that divorce decree has to hold and stand the test of time. It has to be written properly, and there's so many things to do. Sometimes people rush, as you said, Sherry, and it's not written well. And it sometimes, there's some holes in it. And if we just slowed down, done it a little bit more methodically, and more carefully, more diligently, everyone's human. Sometimes things do fall through the cracks. But if you can do everything you can to avoid that, man, going back to court is not fun.
No, it's not. And let me ask you, speaking of court, because we had talked, and this is a trigger point for me, because we talked about it earlier. The brand of divorce says, lawyer up, right? Get a shark, get a bulldog, get somebody that's going to, I want to rip her apart. Or I want to rip him apart, right? That's the brand, right?
Yep.
But one of the things, and this is what I love about what we do and the value that we bring, which is let's look at what's appropriate,
Right.
what's the right thing for the family, what's the right thing for your children, and ultimately, what's the right thing for your bank account. Because, we look at this thing, Paulette, the average cost of divorce in this country is what?
Oh,
Ish.
somewhere between $30,000 and $55,000.
Right. And who has an extra $30,000 to $55,000 sitting around? Is particularly when the options of doing it in a much kinder and gentler way, something that's much more family focused, as opposed to, because, and I get it, when you're in that fight or flight mode of, your spouse coming home saying, I want a divorce, your instant reaction is, I got to find somebody that's going to fight for me. But ultimately, that's, in my opinion, I think that when you start to hire those sharks and you get somebody in there in that battle, that's when communication between you and your spouse is pretty much over.
Yes.
So can you speak to that as a coach, what you do to help your clients maybe make a different choice?
So I really like to talk about, in my brand at Dear Divorce Coach, unhooking from the alignment with your spouse. You will never be able to control who they are or ultimately what they do, sometimes even with your children. So part of the tools I think that an employer can offer is teaching people in a really practical way with divorce coach support. How do I unhook? It's the hardest job we have. And one of the ways to unhook is not to pursue a litigious process. Because yes, there are certainly professionals who will encourage that because they only hear your side of the story. As a coach, and especially one who works with couples, I hear both sides. And if you continue to shame, to blame, to not unhook yourself from alignment with your spouse, then you're not going to be able to find your peace and joy over time. And you're certainly not going to be able to focus at work. So I'm a big believer that slowing it down and de-escalating the legal process as well as yourself is what leads to some conclusion, including an agreement where everybody may be a little bit unhappy at first, but you can have effective co-parent communication, do better for yourself, do better for your kids. So I'm such a believer in de-escalating that process. And sometimes it just takes time. And that's another reason not to rush. Let's get individuals, let's get couples de-escalated so they can deal with each other and co-parent if they need to.
Right. It's an amazing process, just in my own journey through my own divorce um, and watching so many others really struggle through it, not knowing, when you don't know what you don't know. And like I said, the brand of divorce is very big. It's
Yeah.
very loud. It's a lot, when luckily, I think we've had some really good examples, quite frankly, in the Bezos divorce.
Yep.
They did it through mediation. It seemed to be, at least to us, that at least it was a different way of, not, I mean, because good grief, their divorce could have gone on for,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, for 10, 20, 30 years. The same thing with the Gateses divorce.
Right.
They have managed to create something that just didn't destroy their reputations, didn't destroy their relationship with their children,
Right.
and all of those things. So there are, I guess, what I really, the point and the thing that I want to get forward, particularly to the HR executives that are out there listening, that there are other options for your employees that are less expensive. And we all know that having first of all, this event can cause bankruptcy all the time. People file for bankruptcy after divorce. It's a major problem. And you don't want that for your employees. That does not make a stable employee, an employee that can't get a loan for a new car because that they've lost their credit, or they have no more cash. This is another way to keep your employees financially stable and doing something that is normally I mean, the cost of a brand new Ford F-150 EV, I mean, it can be really expensive. I mean, Paulette and I've talked to, millions of dollars people have spent on their divorces. And if they had it all to do over again, I wonder if they had known what some of the other options were to them, if they would have chosen a different path. And I think the answer to that is yes. And so that's the goal here, is to get your employees to make some better choices for themselves, for their children, for their families, which is ultimately a better choice for their careers and for their company. So Sherry, thank you so much for being with us today. If we had to let everybody know how to get in touch with you, what would that be?
Thank you for asking. And again, I think our whole goal here is to teach people to be responsive and held and seen and validated in the way they need during divorce, even while at work, and rather than reactive. So I think in sum, that's the message. And I think it's good for employees and employers. And to find me and know more about the work I do, the best place to go is deardivorcecoach.com. If you're a professional looking to make a connection, hop on a Zoom discovery call. If you're a client who may need potential support, hop on a Zoom discovery call. I want to meet you. I want to know about what's going on for you, and we can connect and work together to help you decide how to behave.
And isn't that the most important thing? Because even HR directors and managers don't really know how to handle this. So let us be your resource. Write to us to get our resource guide so that you have something to hand your employee that's going through it. It's filled with great resources, and we would love to help in any way, shape, or form. So I just want to remind our listeners, if you do need your SHRM credits, please click on this link in this box below and get your SHRM credits. And next week, I wanted to let you all know we've got a really interesting conversation on resilience. The resilience that your employees need, how to give them that resilience after they've gone through a really, really devastating event in their life. That can be a game changer in not such a good way, and having that resilience and how good that's going to be for your employees, and how that can impact employee engagement, motivation, and productivity. And our expert is Amanda Gardner. If you don't know her, you should. She's wonderful, and I know that you all would enjoy meeting her next week. So we hope that you'll be joining us. And for everybody that's been with us today, thank you so much for taking the time. We really are grateful for the time that you've spent with us today. And Sherry, I'm so grateful for you as well to be here with us today, sharing your knowledge and wisdom around the divorce process and the importance of having a divorce coach on your team as that guide, and giving you some direction and some answers to some questions that everybody has, but don't necessarily know that they need to ask them or how to ask them. So thank you so much for being here, giving us this your time today. And everybody else, thank you so much. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend. Bye for now.